We often talk about addiction, but we don't talk about what causes addiction, and we don't talk about the different kinds of addiction. We tend to think of addiction in terms of substance abuse, and that's certainly a major part of addiction. But there's also behavioral addictions. Sorry about that. So when we look at addiction, regardless of which kind it is, it generally starts as an anesthesia for pain. Frequently, this happens in childhood, but it can also happen in adulthood. When we're in pain, emotional pain in particular, and we don't know how to deal with it, and there don't seem to be any resources to help us, we look for anesthesia. And the most common form of addiction that we frequently focus on is substance addiction. So if a child is in pain and dad has a booze cabinet, that's probably what the child is going to look for to see if it will help him with his pain. If mom has a cabinet with prescription drugs, that may be where he goes. If his brother has some recreational drugs, that may be an option. And when all else fails, there's always the refrigerator. All of these are substances that are available to a child way too often within the confines of their own home. And they're addictions that are becoming habits, which is what really then locks us into a pattern of addiction that begins and often happens primarily within the walls of our own homes. They're readily available. And so sometimes this doesn't start until adulthood, but in most cases it starts in childhood. And the driving factor is the same. A child is in pain. They don't want to be in pain. None of us want to be in pain. So they look for anesthesia. And they find something. And it works. And it gives them some semblance of relief. And so the next time they're in pain, well, it worked last time. Let me try it and see if it'll work this time. And it does. It gives them some degree of space, some degree of anesthesia from the new pain. And then the stresses of life impact them. And well, it worked for pain, so let me see if it won't work for stress. And then there's more stress, and so we do it again. And gradually it becomes a habit. It becomes a coping mechanism. We're living on autopilot. We're not feeling anything that's going on because the feeling is painful. And so we're just going to mask it with some sort of substance that will give us temporary relief. The problem is that temporary relief creates its own problems. Those problems could be physical. Those problems could be related to relationships or job security or a whole bunch of things that affect us in life, in adulthood. And what began as anesthesia now becomes another form of pain. And we want to use more. We want to try more. We want to do something different. We don't want to feel. But here's the reality. There are all sorts of addiction recovery programs that are amazing, but they've got a really poor long-term track record. And the reason for that is they don't address the underlying pain. And when the underlying pain is still there, any sort of breaking the habit is going to be temporary in the vast majority of instances. It's only when we heal that underlying pain that caused the need for anesthesia in the first place that then all of those addiction recovery programs have a really great chance of succeeding. You've heard me talk about how addiction is a symptom. And I use the analogy of you've got a really bad headache and nothing you have done will even touch the headache. And you finally go to the doctor and he does a bunch of tests and he comes back and tells you you've got a brain tumor. Well, you're not just concerned about the headache now, you're concerned about the brain tumor. It's causing the headache. You want him to take care of the brain tumor. It's the same thing with childhood trauma and abuse. Those are the underlying disease. It's only when we take care of those things that then we can get rid of the symptoms. So know that you matter and that together we can treat the underlying disease. Now, there's also addiction of behavioral addictions. These are things like gambling, internet, sex, shopping, and the list could go on there also. These are things that where we're using something that is also, we're looking for anesthesia. We're just looking in a different place. And it's the behaviors that we're using to try to anesthetize ourselves to pain, and we're still on autopilot in so many ways. And so a lot of times, these are not the original addictions. These are the addictions that happen when you have successfully come out of a substance addiction program without treating the underlying disease. And so you may no longer drink, but now you gamble. Sometimes they're the original addiction, but a lot of times they're the trade-up addiction, if you will. And they come from the same place. They come from looking to anesthetize us to pain. You've heard me talk about my history and growing up being abused as a child. And one of the legacies of that is feeling like there's something wrong with you, that you're not good enough. And so for years, I dealt with a shopping addiction. I felt that if I had this, then I would feel more valuable. I would feel more like I had it all together and I was looking good to the world. I can't tell you how many times things left the house with the price tag on it that they had when they came into the house. It did not do good things for my financial stability. I was looking to fill a hole. I was looking to feel worth more by having something that was worth more. But it doesn't work. It's a false anesthesia. When I would buy something, I would have that rush that said, yes. But it wouldn't last. It was generally gone by the time I got home. Or on occasion, I would pull something out and look at it and admire it for a day or two or three. But it didn't fill the hole that the pain was creating. It was only when I healed the underlying disease of the childhood abuse that the pain went away, and I no longer needed to shop to try to anesthetize myself to the pain. So here's kind of the scary commentary. There was a time where, especially for behavioral addictions, you had to leave the house. That's no longer the case. It's no longer the case even with substance addictions. There are so many ways that we can go online and gamble or shop or get whatever it is that we're looking for that we think will give us freedom from the pain we're experiencing. And we can do it from the comfort of our own homes. That's made it even more difficult and more imperative that we deal with the underlying disease before all of the symptoms and the addictions have the power to destroy our lives. Because truly they do have the power to do that. And the choice that I would beg of you to make is to do what you need to do to break the chains to those addictions. And that means healing whatever it is that created the need for anesthesia that resulted in the addiction to begin with. If you want to know more, reach out to me. I don't want to see anybody living in the pain of addiction or any other symptom of childhood trauma when I know there's an option. Remember, you are worth it. And today, this very hour, as you are hearing me, your time is now.